She never expected a simple Saturday stroll to change her life forever. Mildred Thompson, a 78-year-old retiree living in a quiet suburban town, spent her mornings browsing garage sales, searching for small treasures and forgotten memories. That day, among dusty books and old trinkets, a tiny $7 painting caught her eye. Most would have ignored it, but something about the colors, the brushstrokes, and the faint signature made Mildred pause. Little did she know, this unassuming piece of art would lead to an astonishing discovery, turn her world upside down, and transform her into a millionaire. Sometimes the smallest finds hide the greatest secrets. And for Mildred, fate had chosen her to uncover one. Mildred Thompson was an ordinary woman, living an ordinary life in a quiet suburban town. At 78, she had long since retired from her job as a school librarian, and her days were filled with simple routines: morning tea on the porch, tending to her small garden, and chatting with neighbors whenever she went out. Despite the calmness of her life, Mildred had always carried a spark of curiosity and a love for small adventures. She never liked sitting still for too long, and one of her favorite ways to pass the time was exploring garage sales on Saturday mornings. To her, garage sales were like treasure hunts. Every old book, dusty lamp, or faded photograph held the possibility of a hidden story or a small surprise waiting to be discovered. That particular Saturday morning, Mildred bundled herself into her worn but comfortable coat, grabbed her little canvas shopping bag, and set out for her routine stroll through the neighborhood. The sun was shining softly, and the air carried the crisp freshness of early winter. She passed a row of familiar houses, many of which had small signs advertising garage sales in their driveways. Mildred's eyes sparkled at the sight. Each sign was an invitation to a new adventure. She wandered from one driveway to another, browsing tables covered in trinkets, old toys, and stacks of books. She greeted the sellers politely, exchanging small talk, occasionally asking questions about the items she found interesting. Most of the objects she looked at were ordinary well-worn dishes, faded sweaters, and broken jewelry, but Mildred didn't mind. She enjoyed seeing the memories these items represented, imagining the lives of the people who had once cherished them. Eventually, she came to a small sale at the corner of Maple Street. The setup was modest: a folding table with a few boxes of items, a worn blanket on the grass displaying various objects, and a friendly elderly couple sitting behind it. Mildred greeted them with her usual warmth and began browsing. Her eyes fell on books first, then small knickknacks, until something at the edge of the table caught her attention. It was a painting leaning against a box of old magazines. It wasn't large, about the size of a school sketchpad, but it immediately drew her in. The painting was a landscape of sorts, showing a small cottage by a river, surrounded by trees that seemed almost to shimmer in golden sunlight. The colors were bright, yet the paint had a texture that suggested age. Something about it felt alive to Mildred. It wasn't just an image on canvas. It felt as though it held a story she couldn't yet understand. She picked it up carefully, turning it over to examine the back. There was a faint signature, partially smudged and hard to read, but it added to the mystery. "Do you want to sell this?" she asked the woman at the table. "Oh, that old thing. Sure. It's yours for a few dollars," the woman replied with a dismissive wave. Mildred smiled and, without overthinking it, handed over $7 from her small purse. She tucked the painting into her bag, careful not to damage it, and thanked the couple. As she walked back to her car, she felt a warm, inexplicable excitement. It was just a painting after all, and she knew she hadn't bought anything particularly rarer, so she thought. Yet holding it in her hands, she felt a flutter of curiosity. She wondered about the story behind it, who had painted it. Why had it ended up at a garage sale? How many people had looked at it over the years without noticing anything special? Back home, Mildred carefully cleaned a spot on her living room wall and hung the painting there. She stepped back, admiring it in the soft afternoon light. There was something comforting in the way it brightened the room, yet also mysterious, as if it carried secrets she was meant to uncover. She told herself it was just a lovely piece to enjoy, and that sometimes the joy of finding something unexpected was reward enough. Over the next few days, Mildred found herself stealing glances at the painting more often than she expected. It became a topic of conversation whenever friends came over, and she noticed herself describing it with increasing fascination. She didn't know why, but there was a strange pull she felt toward it. A sense that there was more to this unassuming artwork than met the eye. Even during her quiet moments in the garden, her mind would drift to the cottage by the river, imagining who had painted it and what story lay hidden within those brushstrokes. Though Mildred had spent most of her life surrounded by books and knowledge, she had never considered herself an expert in art. She wasn't sure what made a painting valuable or how to tell if it was truly special. Yet, she had a keen eye for detail and an instinctive sense when something felt significant. And this painting, with its subtle textures and delicate colors, felt different. It wasn't just a decorative piece. It seemed alive in a way that demanded attention. Little did Mildred know, that simple, almost careless purchase of $7 painting at a quiet garage sale would soon change her life in ways she could never have imagined. The spark of curiosity she had felt in that moment, the instinctive pull towards something overlooked, would set her on a path that led to discovery, excitement, and a fortune she had never dreamed of. All of this began on an ordinary Saturday morning. With nothing more than a worn coat, a canvas bag, and a sense of adventure that refused to fade. Even at 78 years old, by the end of that first week, Mildred often found herself sitting in her living room, staring at the painting for longer than she intended. She imagined stories behind the cottage, the river, and the shimmering trees. Each glance sparked a question, a curiosity that whispered to her to explore further. And though she had no idea what lay ahead, she felt a quiet thrill in knowing that sometimes the smallest, most ordinary moments could carry extraordinary surprises. Mildred Thompson couldn't stop thinking about the little painting she had bought for $7 at the garage sale. Every time she walked past it in her living room, she felt a strange mixture of curiosity and excitement. There was something about the brushstrokes, the colors, even the faint signature in the corner that made her feel as though the painting had a story it wanted to tell. It wasn't just a pretty decoration anymore. It was a mystery. And Mildred loved mysteries. One evening, after making herself a cup of chamomile tea, she sat down at her small wooden table by the window and looked at the painting again. She turned it gently in her hands, examining every detail. The colors seemed unusually vibrant for something that looked as old as it did. The strokes were deliberate and confident, yet they carried a softness that suggested skill and care. She noticed subtle patterns in the way the trees were painted and the river flowed, details that seemed almost too precise to be casual. Mildred's imagination began to run wild. Who could have painted this? Was it someone famous? Or was it just an amateur's work that somehow had a special charm? Curiosity got the better of her. Mildred decided she needed to find out more, even though she didn't know much about art or artists. She had read a few books on art history over the years and had visited galleries, but she wasn't an expert. Still, she knew there were ways to learn more. She grabbed her smartphone and snapped a few clear photos of the painting. Focusing on the signature and the details of the brushwork, then she searched for online forums where people discussed art. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if anyone would take her seriously, but then she reminded herself that there was nothing to lose. Within minutes, she found a forum full of art enthusiasts and collectors. The community was active, with people sharing photos of paintings, asking questions about authenticity, and helping each other identify artists. She created a new post, carefully describing the painting, including the colors, the style, and the barely readable signature. She uploaded the photos and asked if anyone had seen a painting like this, or if they recognized the artist's work. Then she waited, sipping her tea nervously. It didn't take long for the responses to start rolling in. Mildred was surprised at how quickly people replied. Some were casual, saying it looked nice, but probably nothing special, while others were more serious. One person, in particular, caught her attention. They wrote that the brushwork and the style resembled a 20th century painter, who was not widely known but highly regarded among collectors and museums. They mentioned the signature looked similar to several authenticated works by this artist. Mildred's heart raced. Could it really be possible that her little $7 painting was connected to someone important in the art world? She didn't want to get her hopes up too quickly, but she also couldn't ignore the possibility. That night, she barely slept, thinking about what she had learned. The more she studied the painting in her living room, the more she noticed details she hadn't seen before. Tiny touches in the light reflecting off the river. The way the cottage's roof was painted. Even the subtle variations in the leaves of the trees, all these things suddenly seemed intentional, deliberate, and professional. Mildred realized that she might have stumbled upon something truly special. The next day, Mildred decided to take the investigation one step further. She called her niece Sarah, who worked as a librarian, and asked if she could help her research the artist mentioned on the forum. Sarah was excited and promised to help. Together, they spent hours in the local library and online, searching for any references, auction records, or images of the artist's known works. They compared styles, studied old photographs of paintings, and tried to match the signature on Mildred's painting to documented pieces. Every small detail seemed to strengthen the idea that the painting could indeed be authentic. Despite all the online advice and research, Mildred knew she couldn't be certain without consulting a professional. She remembered a local art historian, Dr. James Caldwell, who had a reputation for authenticity verification and had worked with several museums. With a mix of excitement and nervousness, she called his office. After explaining her discovery and sending him photos, Dr. Caldwell agreed to meet her and examine the painting in person. Mildred felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She had spent her life in quiet routines, and now she was on the verge of something that could be far bigger than she had ever imagined. When Dr. Caldwell arrived, he carefully examined the painting under proper lighting, inspecting the brushstrokes, the texture of the canvas, and the faint signature. Mildred watched as he made notes, occasionally muttering to himself about the painting's style and technique. The expert seemed genuinely intrigued, and Mildred couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. She realized that what had begun as a simple curiosity might actually lead to a revelation. Over the next few days, Mildred's life felt different. The painting had shifted from being just a charming decoration to a source of fascination and suspense. She found herself sharing her story with friends, who were amazed and curious, and even started thinking about the possibilities if the painting turned out to be authentic. She imagined exhibitions, collectors, and perhaps even museums displaying the work. Mildred laughed quietly to herself at the thought of it. She had always lived modestly, never expecting anything extraordinary, yet here she was, caught in the middle of a mystery that could change everything. Even in small, everyday moments, the painting occupied her mind. When she poured herself morning coffee or tended to her flowers, she couldn't help but glance toward it. She studied it in different lights, noticing how the colors shifted in the morning sun and how shadows played across the canvas in the evening. Mildred began to understand that she wasn't just looking at a picture. She was trying to understand the life and skill of the person who had created it, the story behind the image, and the journey that had brought it into her hands. For Mildred, the most exciting part wasn't just the possibility of discovering a valuable work of art, it was the thrill of uncovering something hidden, something forgotten by time. She realized that in her quiet, routine life, she had found an adventure that was both intellectual and emotional. Each new clue she uncovered about the painting felt like opening a door to the past, revealing a story that had waited decades to be discovered by the end of the week. Mildred had learned enough to feel cautiously optimistic. The advice from the forum, the research she and her niece had conducted, and the initial inspection by Dr. Caldwell all pointed to something remarkable. Yet she knew she had to be patient. True verification would take time, and the painting might still turn out to be an imitation or a copy. Still, Mildred felt a sense of anticipation she hadn't experienced in years. The simple act of buying a $7 painting at a garage sale had opened a door to mystery, knowledge, and excitement. For the first time in a long while, Mildred's ordinary life felt extraordinary. The painting had become more than just an object on the wall. It was a symbol of curiosity, patience, and discovery. She realized that the adventure wasn't just about money or fame. It was about the joy of exploration, the thrill of learning, and the unexpected turns life could take when one dared to notice the small wonders hidden in plain sight. Mildred Thompson felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as she waited for the final authentication of her painting. After weeks of research, online consultations, and careful inspection by Dr. James Caldwell, she knew the moment of truth was near. Every day, she found herself glancing at the painting on her living room wall, studying its details, imagining what secrets it might finally reveal. The little landscape she had bought for $7 suddenly felt like a key to a story that had been hidden for decades. Dr. Caldwell had arranged for Mildred to meet him at a small, well-lit gallery in town that specialized in fine art evaluations. As she drove there, her mind raced. She imagined every possible scenario. What if it was just a clever imitation? What if all her excitement had been for nothing? But alongside her anxiety was an undercurrent of hope. A quiet whisper telling her that she had stumbled upon something truly remarkable. She remembered the initial thrill when she saw the painting at the garage sale, and she felt a warm smile spread across her face. Somehow, she knew this journey was unlike anything she had experienced before. When she arrived at the gallery, Dr. Caldwell greeted her warmly. The gallery smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper, and soft classical music played in the background. Mildred carefully unwrapped the painting from the protective cover she had brought. She held it with gentle reverence, almost afraid to touch it. As though the slightest pressure might change its fate, Dr. Caldwell examined it with a magnifying glass first. Then, under special lighting to detect layers of paint, brush techniques, and the type of canvas used. Mildred watched silently, her heart thumping in her chest. "It's unusual," Dr. Caldwell murmured as he leaned closer. "The brushwork, the layering. Even the way the light is captured, here it's very consistent with some of the pieces by the artists we discussed. But we'll need to conduct a few tests to be absolutely certain." Mildred nodded. Trying to keep her excitement in check, Dr. Caldwell explained that the painting would be analyzed for pigments, canvas age, and the chemical composition of the paint. Every little detail mattered in authenticating a piece of art. And while the signature was important, it wasn't enough on its own. Mildred listened carefully, fascinated by the science behind art authentication. She had never realized how much went into determining whether a painting was genuine, and it made her appreciation for the artwork grow even more. Over the next few days, the painting underwent careful testing. Mildred left it with Dr. Caldwell, trusting his expertise, though she found it hard to stop thinking about it. She checked in frequently, calling to ask if there were any updates, and each time, Dr. Caldwell offered encouraging but cautious words. "Everything looks promising," he said one afternoon, "but we have to wait for the final lab results. Patience is key." Mildred tried to follow his advice, but the anticipation made her restless. She found herself pacing around her living room, imagining the possibilities of what this painting could mean. Finally, the day came when Dr. Caldwell called with the news. Mildred was sitting in her favorite armchair, knitting quietly, when the phone rang. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked it up. Dr. Caldwell's voice was calm but carried a hint of excitement. "Mildred, I've received the final report. The painting is authentic. It is indeed an original work by the artist we suspected. Based on its rarity and condition, the appraisal values it at over $1 million. Mildred felt her heart leap. $1 million. She had spent $7 on this painting, and now it was worth a fortune. She sat down abruptly, knitting needles clattering to the floor. She couldn't stop smiling, tears of disbelief welling in her eyes. It seemed unreal, almost like a dream. She thought back to the garage sale, to the moment she had picked up the painting, to the thrill she had felt when she first noticed the subtle details. Everything had led to this moment, Dr. Caldwell continued, explaining that the painting's uniqueness added to its value. It was a piece that had not been seen publicly before, making it highly desirable to collectors and galleries. Mildred listened in awe, absorbing every word. She felt a mixture of joy, amazement, and gratitude. It wasn't just the money, it was the story, the journey, and the discovery that made the moment so extraordinary. For a woman who had lived a quiet, ordinary life, this was a revelation. After the call, Mildred couldn't stop thinking about what to do next. She imagined the excitement in the art world when the news became public, the offers from collectors, and the possibility of seeing her painting displayed in a prestigious gallery. But she also felt a sense of responsibility. This was a piece of history, and she wanted to make sure it was treated with respect. She knew she would have to be careful in choosing where and how it would be sold. Over the next few days, Mildred shared the news with close friends and family. Their reactions ranged from astonishment to delight. Her niece Sarah was overjoyed and could hardly believe that her aunt had stumbled upon such an extraordinary treasure. Mildred's friends were amazed at the story of the $7 painting that turned out to be worth a fortune. Everyone wanted to see it, and she found herself recounting the journey from the garage sale to the final authentication. Each retelling brought back the excitement, the suspense, and the joy she had felt throughout the process. Yet amid all the excitement, Mildred remained humble. She didn't let the news change who she was. She still enjoyed her quiet mornings, her walks through the neighborhood, and her simple pleasures. But now, everything had a new layer of meaning. Even the smallest discoveries held potential for greatness. Mildred realized that curiosity, attention to detail, and a willingness to explore the unknown had led her to this incredible moment. She felt a profound sense of wonder at the way life could surprise her. Even at 78 years old, the authentication of the painting was more than just a financial windfall. It was a validation of Mildred's intuition and curiosity. She had followed a hunch, trusted her instincts, and explored her fascination with the artwork. In doing so, she had uncovered a hidden treasure that had waited decades to be discovered. The painting, once a simple garage sale find, now represented possibility, adventure, made in the magic of unexpected discoveries. By the end of the week, Mildred had begun to make plans. She wanted to ensure the painting found the right home, one that respected its history and value. She considered galleries, museums, and collectors, carefully weighing her options. While the monetary value was astonishing, what mattered most to her was the journey, the thrill of discovery, the excitement of investigation, and the joy of learning something new. The $7 painting had transformed from an ordinary object into a symbol of hope, curiosity, and the extraordinary potential hidden in everyday life. Mildred often returned to her living room to gaze at the painting, reflecting on the improbable journey that had brought it into her hands. She realized that sometimes, life's most remarkable experiences came from the simplest choices: a casual visit to a garage sale, a spark of curiosity, and the courage to follow one's instincts. The painting had opened a door to a world she had never imagined, and Mildred felt a deep sense of gratitude for every step of the path that had led her to this moment. After the exciting news that her painting was authentic and valued at over $1 million, Mildred Thompson felt both exhilarated and overwhelmed. The quiet life she had lived for decades suddenly seemed worlds away. Her little house, once a haven of routine and comfort, now felt like the starting point of a new chapter full of possibilities and unknowns. For Mildred, the thrill wasn't only about the money. It was the sudden shift from ordinariness to extraordinary. A chance to see how the world of art, collectors, and galleries worked. She knew she had to proceed carefully and thoughtfully. Within days of the authentication, Mildred began receiving calls and emails from art dealers, galleries, and collectors. Some were respectful, offering advice and guidance on the next steps. Others were more eager, trying to secure the painting before she even had a chance to consider the options. Mildred had never been in this situation before. She had always lived simply, managing her modest retirement funds carefully. Now, she was at the center of attention in a world she barely understood. Every message made her heart race, and she often found herself pacing her living room, imagining the possibilities. Her niece Sarah became her closest advisor. Sarah had always been supportive and level-headed, and Mildred trusted her opinions completely. Together, they discussed the potential outcomes of selling the painting quickly to the highest bidder versus waiting for the right gallery or auction house to handle it with care. Mildred wanted to ensure that the piece would be treated with respect and that its history and significance would be. She didn't want to make a hasty decision that could result in regret. Mildred also took time to educate herself about the art world. She read articles and books, watched documentaries about famous auctions, and even visited a few local galleries to understand how they operated. She was fascinated by the way art was valued, not just for its beauty, but for its history, rarity, and the reputation of the artist. Every new piece of knowledge made her more confident in her ability to make the right decisions. She realized that the painting was not just a financial asset. It was a part of cultural history, and she wanted to honor that fact. One afternoon, she met with a representative from a prestigious auction house. The representative was professional and kind, explaining how the auction process worked and how they could ensure the painting reached serious collectors who would appreciate it. Mildred listened attentively, asking questions about security, insurance, and how the painting would be presented. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness, imagining the moment it would be placed on display for potential buyers to see. Sarah took careful notes, making sure they understood all the details before committing to anything. Despite the growing excitement, Mildred took time for quiet reflection. She often sat in her living room, gazing at the painting and thinking about the journey it had taken to reach her hands. From the garage sale to the online forums, the research, and the expert inspections. Every step had been a mixture of curiosity, intuition, and patience. She felt a deep appreciation for the way life could surprise someone, even in their later years. It gave her a renewed sense of vitality, feeling that adventure and discovery were not limited by age. Friends and neighbors were amazed when they learned the news, and Mildred found herself telling the story again and again. Some couldn't believe it, a simple garage sale find worth over $1 million. Others were inspired by her curiosity and persistence. Mildred enjoyed sharing her story, not to boast, but to celebrate the unexpected ways life could reward curiosity and courage. She realized that her experience could encourage others to follow their instincts and pay attention to the little details that often go unnoticed. Offers continued to pour in, and Mildred learned to negotiate with care. She didn't want to be rushed or pressured by anyone, no matter how tempting the numbers were. She and Sarah discussed every proposal in detail, weighing the potential benefits against the importance of preserving the painting's legacy. It was a delicate balance, ensuring she received fair value while also protecting the integrity of the artwork. Mildred found herself developing a newfound confidence in decision-making, realizing that she could handle this world she had never imagined being a part of. During this period, Mildred also reflected on what she wanted to do with her life moving forward. She thought about her family, her friends, and the community she had always cared about. The painting's value provided a level of financial security she had never had, but she knew it also came with responsibility. She wanted to use her fortune in ways that mattered, to make a difference and to create opportunities for others. Just as she had been given an opportunity by chance, Mildred's mornings became a mix of routine and planning. She continued her walks through the neighborhood, her visits to small shops, and her quiet tea times on the porch. Yet now, each day also included phone calls, emails, and meetings related to the painting. The world of art had become part of her life, but she remained grounded, refusing to let the attention or the potential wealth change who she was. She was still Mildred Thompson, a woman who loved small adventures and simple pleasures, but now with a story that would be remembered for years to come, finally. After weeks of careful consideration, Mildred and Sarah decided to place the painting in a highly respected auction house that specialized in rare and historical artworks. They worked closely with the curators to ensure the painting was displayed beautifully, with proper lighting, security, and a detailed explanation of its history. Mildred visited the gallery frequently, watching as the painting took its place among other valuable works. Feeling proud of the care and respect it was receiving throughout this period, Mildred felt a growing sense of accomplishment. The painting had started as a simple curiosity, a small object that caught her attention at a garage sale. Now it represented so much more: discovery, patience, and the rewards of trusting one's instincts. She realized that the journey had been just as important as the destination. The process had taught her about art, negotiation, decision-making, and even herself. She felt empowered, alive, deeply grateful for the unexpected adventure life had given her. As the auction date approached, Mildred took time to enjoy the painting one last time before it left her hands. She studied the tiny details she had grown to love, the colors, the textures, and the story they seemed to tell. She imagined the artist, long gone, and felt a connection across time, silent understanding between the creator and the discoverer. It was a moment of reflection, pause to appreciate how one small decision, buying a painting for $7, had transformed her life. The day the painting was set to go to auction, Mildred felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She knew that no matter the outcome, her life had already been changed. She had been given a chance to participate in something extraordinary, and she had done so with care, curiosity, and integrity. The painting was more than just a financial asset. It was a symbol of adventure, intuition, and the magic of discovery. Mildred realized that the experience had given her something priceless: confidence in her instincts, an appreciation for the unexpected, and a renewed sense of purpose. She had always lived a quiet, modest life, but now she understood that extraordinary moments could arrive at any age, often when least expected. The little $7 painting had not only changed her financial situation, but had transformed her perspective on life, proving that curiosity, patience, and courage could lead to unimaginable rewards. The morning of the auction arrived, and Mildred Thompson felt a mix of excitement, nervousness, and quiet pride. Her little painting, once tucked away at a garage sale, now sat in a prominent place in the auction house, carefully displayed with professional lighting and protective glass. Mildred had arrived early, wanting to see it one last time before it went to the highest bidder. She marveled at how far her life had come from the quiet days of gardening and tea on her porch. She felt like a character in a story she could never have imagined, living herself. The auction house was buzzing with activity. Collectors, gallery representatives, and journalists milled about, their eyes scanning the rooms filled with priceless artworks. Mildred could feel the electricity in the air, the anticipation, the murmurs of speculation, and the sense of history being made. She quietly observed the crowd, wondering which of these people would understand the value and beauty of the painting she had discovered for $7. She felt both nervous and thrilled, knowing that soon someone would own a piece of art that had been hidden for decades, yet it had been part of her life in such a meaningful way. As the auction began, Mildred found herself seated near the front, clutching her niece Sarah's hand for reassurance. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the room, listing items one by one with calm precision. When it was finally time for her painting, the room hushed. The auctioneer introduced it with a story how it had been discovered at a garage sale, the detailed research and authentication process, and its status as a rare, original work by a significant 20th century artist. Mildred felt a lump in her throat as she listened. Her modest purchase had become a legendary find, celebrated by people who truly appreciated its significance. Bidding started cautiously, with a few collectors raising their paddles. Each bid made Mildred's heart race. She watched the numbers climb higher and higher, feeling both amazement and disbelief. The painting that had hung quietly in her living room now commanded attention and respect from serious art enthusiasts. She thought back to that moment at the garage sale, when she had chosen it almost on a whim, trusting her curiosity and instincts. Little did she know then that her decision would lead to a moment like this, a mixture of suspense, celebration, and fulfillment. As the bids continued, the auctioneer skillfully encouraged higher offers, describing the painting's rarity, its history, and the skill of the artist. Mildred could barely keep her composure as the numbers rose steadily. She realized that the value of the painting wasn't just in the material terms, but in the recognition of its artistic significance. Each increase in the bid felt like validation not only of the painting itself, but of her own judgment and intuition. She had trusted her instincts, followed her curiosity, and discovered something truly extraordinary. Finally, after several tense minutes, the bidding slowed and stopped at an astonishing amount, $1.2 million. The auctioneer's gavel came down, and the room erupted in applause. Mildred felt a rush of emotion she couldn't quite describe: disbelief, joy, pride, and even a touch of surrealism. She had never imagined herself in a situation like this, yet here she was, holding the quiet satisfaction that her small act of curiosity had led to a life-changing event. She glanced at Sarah, who was grinning with tears in her eyes, hugged her tightly, sharing a moment of triumph and gratitude. After the auction, Mildred met the buyer briefly. They were respectful and enthusiastic, expressing genuine appreciation for the painting's beauty and history. Mildred felt reassured that her treasure would be valued and preserved. She reflected on the journey, the hours of research, the advice from experts, the patience it had taken to navigate offers, and the emotional ups and downs that had brought her to this moment. She realized that the experience had been transformative, not just financially but emotionally and intellectually. With the proceeds from the sale, Mildred made thoughtful plans. She decided to secure her family's future, ensuring that her children and grandchildren would be taken care of. She also chose to give back to her community, donating a portion to local charities that supported education and the arts. Mildred had always valued learning and creativity. She wanted to help others experience the joy of discovery and artistic appreciation that had changed her own life. Additionally, she set up a small scholarship for aspiring artists, encouraging them to pursue their passions and reminding them that even small efforts could lead to great achievements. Despite her newfound wealth, Mildred remained humble. She continued to enjoy her quiet routine's morning walks, tea on the porch, and visits to her neighbors, but now with a deeper sense of fulfillment and confidence. The experience had taught her that life could change unexpectedly, and that paying attention to small opportunities could lead to remarkable outcomes. She felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that she could navigate a complex world of art, finance, and decision-making, even at 78 years old. Over the following months, Mildred's story became well known in her community and beyond. Newspapers, online articles, and local news outlets highlighted the incredible journey of a woman who had bought a $7 painting at a garage sale and turned it into a fortune. People admired her curiosity, patience, and wisdom. Mildred enjoyed the attention but remained grounded, always emphasizing the importance of following one's instincts and appreciating life's small wonders. She knew that while the painting had changed her life materially, the lessons and experiences she gained were equally priceless. The painting itself, now in the hands of a respected collector, continued to hold a special place in Mildred's memory. She often thought about the little details, the colors, the textures, and the story behind it. She remembered the thrill of discovery, the suspense of authentication, and the joy of seeing it valued and celebrated. To her, the painting represented more than wealth. It symbolized curiosity, perseverance, and the unexpected magic that life could bring. Mildred also found herself reflecting on her own life journey. She realized that her happiness and fulfillment didn't come from the money alone, but from the sense of adventure, discovery, and purpose that the painting had sparked. The experience reminded her that ordinary moments, walking through a garage sale, noticing something unusual, or following a hunch, could lead to extraordinary outcomes. She felt grateful for every small decision that had led her to this point, and she carried a quiet sense of wonder about what else life might hold. In the end, Mildred's story was more than a tale of financial success. It was a testament to the power of curiosity, the rewards of patience, and the joy of discovery. She had started with a simple act of interest, a willingness to explore the unknown, and an eye for something special. That act had transformed her life, giving her financial security, a sense of accomplishment, and a story that would inspire others for years to come. Mildred Thompson, a quiet, retired woman from a small town, had proven that life could be extraordinary, even in its most unexpected moments. As she returned home after the auction, Mildred paused at her front door, looking out at the familiar streets she had walked for decades. Everything looked the same, yet everything had changed. She smiled to herself, feeling a deep sense of contentment. The little $7 painting had brought adventure, excitement, and transformation into her life. It had reminded her that curiosity, intuition, and courage were priceless gifts. Mildred knew that she would carry the memory of this journey forever, a constant reminder that sometimes life's greatest treasures are found when least expected, and that ordinary people can experience extraordinary moments if they remain open, observant, and willing to follow their hearts.